Choose Your Legends 8 is finally here, and that means Alfonse, Bernadetta, Female Robin, and of course my boy Felix will be getting Brave versions. In this video, I'll be analyzing their weapon, skills, roles, best game modes, and all the new info covered in the Fade channel. If you'd like to watch my initial reaction to the reveal alongside DTM, check out my stream VOD. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Now let's get started with the main character of Fire Emblem Heroes, Alfonse. Okay, so we have Brave Alfonse, and he's a Green Axe Cavalry taken after his father. With some absolutely amazing art. I love this art. His preference weapon, Majestic Glitner, has Canto Distance +1, max of 4, Slaying, and at the start of turn he's going to do a check to see if there's an ally within 3 rows or 3 columns of himself. If he does, he has a visible defense and res +6 he gives to himself, and he gives himself 1 extra movement. And then essentially he gets times +4 in his weapon. Then if he initiates combat, or if there's an ally within 3 rows or 3 columns yet again, he's going to grant himself defense and resistance +X, and inflict defense and res -X on the foe, where X is 5 plus the number of allies within 3 rows or 3 columns, so essentially you're getting +14 to all stats except for speed. You're also going to get 10% true damage based off your defense, but not with AoEs. You're going to get 10% flat damage reduction based off your defense, but not with AoEs. And then also when your special triggers, you're going to get damage reduction piercing, which is really nice as well. And then when your special triggers, you'll also get damage reduction piercing. We then move on to his preference special, Making of a King, and this is what really makes Alfonse very unique. So it boosts damage by 30% of his defense, but it also plus the defense from his Great Talent effect, which we're about to go over right now. It also gives him 30 to 40% special damage reduction, which means it's not pierceable, and that's all the time. It's based off like everything, right? It's not just like when the special is charged or when it triggers, it's all the time like all Tina's, which is really strong. Now this is where Great Talent comes in. Essentially at start of turn, he's going to grant himself 2 stacks of Great Talent to attack, defense, and resistance, and +1 attack, defense, and resistance to allies. So essentially what this is a new permanent buff you can give to your units, including Alfonse himself, where it just raises their visible stats, and it stacks. After he procs his special, he'll give himself an additional +4 to attack, defense, and resistance, and attack, defense, and res +2 to all allies within that 3 rows or 3 columns. He can get a max of 20 stacks himself, and allies can get a max of 10. This is really unique and very cool. It's a new type of support offered in the game, and it kind of builds up over time. I actually had an effect like this on my theory craft for Brave Felix. This is a much more supportive effect, while Brave Felix's was more of a selfish one. Either way, this is a very cool effect, and I think that this could be used more in the future, and if that's the case, being able to stack it really quickly is very powerful. So not only does this special offer a lot of damage and damage reduction, just making Alfonse difficult to take down and also just being able to nuke things, but it also allows him to offer some really valuable support and make himself stronger over time. I think this is a really cool and unique effect, and I expect to see a lot more of it in the future coming days. And the really interesting thing will be to see if these Great Talent units can support each other and synergize really well, and then we can have some really insane stat stacking teams again. We then have a new tier 4 A skill, Fortifications. This inflicts attack -5 on Alfonse, but it also grants a defense and resistance +7. These are visible stats. He also gets a distant counter if there's a terrain down, so if he has some kind of divine feint effect, he gets distant counter, which is really cool. And then if he initiates combat, he'll get defense and res +6 during combat, and he'll also get 10 flat damage reduction against specials, also very powerful. And then lastly, after he acts, if he enters combat this turn, he'll put Divine Vein Stone down around him. We literally just got Stronghold on Hathrid, and I thought that was a really cool skill, but this is just better in my opinion for most situations, as it does offer distant counter, which is really good, terrain creation, and even additional effects in combat. It doesn't have the effects of like cleansing debuffs or like cleansing panic, but honestly as a tank these effects are much more valuable. So I think this is a very powerful A skill and definitely something that's going to be highly desirable by a lot of units. We then move on to another inheritable skill he has, Reopening. This is a tier 4 B skill. It seems to be coming out of guard, and what this essentially does is it inflicts attack -5 on the foe, inflicts guard on the foe, and then you get 10 to 20% defense true damage, and 10 to 20% flat damage reduction based off your defense as well. And both amounts will be based off if the unit can make a follow-up attack or a brave attack. If it's a follow-up attack or a brave attack, they get 10%. If they can't, they get 20%. So you can either get that one big hit, or you can get 2 increments of 10%. Either way, this is a very powerful skill, and the fact that it comes out of guard means that it might be inheritable to a lot of types of units, which is really awesome as it could open up a whole bunch of new builds for those movement types who don't have a lot of access to skills. Brave Alfonse also comes with Breath of Life 4, which is a very notable and powerful skill as well, so some great fodder on this unit. Now let's talk about the unit himself and what kind of roles he's trying to play. He is a tank support unit. He really is quite tanky. He can stack a lot of flat damage reduction, and if he goes in and kills something, he can even trigger a lot of effects as well that help him be really tanky and give him things like distant counter and terrain. And so I think it's a very interesting mix of support and tanking once again. He really wants to go in and do like the hit and stick effect where he just hits somebody really hard and then stops and kind of tanks everything, which is cool. And that extra movement really helps him out a ton too. Now when it comes to game modes I could see Alfonse being used in, I could definitely see him being used in Ether Raid's offense, either as an Omni tank or as a Gale Force unit. He does have ×4 in his weapon, which is extremely unique for cavalry units, meaning that he can really easily do Gale Force, and also he has extra movement, which is really nice as well. He can also be used in Summer Duels, I think, as well. He is a 4 movement cav, which is like the most key effect you need as a melee cav to be usable in Summer Duels. And when it comes to that kind of game mode, I can see him be used in those Pathfinder teams. He is going to be kind of different than most other units where they kind of want to go in, just kill something and get out. This is the kind of unit, almost like Winter Dimitri, where he wants to go in, kill a key target, and then just kind of plant himself there and kind of just take some hits and like cause pressure on the enemy team. Overall, I'm very happy with Brave Alfonse. He has some absolutely amazing art alongside a really unique kit and some really unique support, and I'm really excited to see how great talent develops from here. But with that said, let's move on to our women's side winner, Bernadetta. Okay, so we have Brave Bernadetta with her preference weapon, the Inexhaustible. This enables cancel distance max of 3, meaning she's insanely mobile. She gets Slaying, she's effective against flying foes. She gets a dual phase Brave weapon, and then if she initiates combat or if there's a bonus active on her, she'll get +5 to all stats during combat. She gets all stats plus 15% of her speed at start of combat. She gets 20% true damage based off her speed, not including AoEs, and then lastly she gets damage reduction halving. So overall a pretty powerful preference weapon that is really built to nuke. We then have a new inheritable special, Curved Shot. This is a 2 cooldown special and it boosts his special damage by 30% of the greater of foe's speed or defense. And then if unit or foe special is ready, you get that 40% non-pierceable damage reduction. So it's essentially the same as Armored Beacon, but it does have pretty cool scaling as it kind of adapts to whatever's better on the foe, their speed or defense. The great thing about Curved Shot is it's going to offer some unpierceable damage reduction, which is a big deal. One of the reasons like something like Yunaka fell off is because she was getting killed in retaliation. So having unpierceable damage reduction is a great way for ranged units to survive those attacks. We also have Attack Speed Prime 4 and Assassin Strike, some amazing fodder. But then we come to her preference C skill, Paranoia. So what this does at the start of turn, you're going to grant no fault to Bernadetta herself, and then she'll also grant Paranoia to herself and any allies within 2 spaces of herself. She'll deal 1 damage to herself and those allies. So that key Bernadetta signature effect, and then at the start of turn, she's going to look at all the penalties on herself, and then she's going to give those to the nearest foe within 5 spaces, and then she'll cleanse her own penalties, which is crazy. And then once again, at start of combat, if she meets that HP condition of 99%, she'll give herself attack speed +5 during combat. She'll get anti-guard. So what is Paranoia? So Paranoia essentially checks if you're below 100% HP. It's going to give you attack +5 during combat. It's going to give you a desperation effect. And then also you get a conditional vantage effect, where if the unit who is attacking you is in the same range, so if like you're melee and they're melee, or if you're ranged and they're range, or another condition where they have 3 or more penalties on them, you're going to get that vantage effect. It's a very powerful new bonus effect. So overall, Paranoia is extremely powerful. It's giving her no fault, which is one of the key effects she really needs. And then Paranoia itself is allowing Bernadette to fulfill a very powerful role we've seen in Summer Duels before, where it was kind of used with speed preempt builds. You have a nuke go in, they destroy like either the save or a key unit on the enemy team, and then because they have advantage themselves, they can kind of chill out their safe, so the foe can't really take them out, and then you either end turn immediately and then get to do it again, or you can like bring them back to safety with one of your other units. Also, getting Desperation is really strong on Brave units as Bernadette is quite fast, which means that she can quad. So she can hit 4 times before the foe can even counterattack. You combine that with some attack and speed and anti-guard, and you have a very powerful nuke. But the really cool thing in my opinion as well is that you also get this effect where you can throw your penalties onto your foes, which is really powerful in the current meta because right now there's a ton of different debuffs being thrown around, and being able to just take all those debuffs and just throw them back at that foe and not having them on yourself is really good. Now obviously this won't like cleanse all the units on your team, but it will allow Bernadetta to be like completely penalty free, which is really strong. Now when it comes to roles, Bernadetta is a support nuke. Those are the 2 main things she's doing. She's mostly a nuke, but she does have some nice support effects with that HP manipulation that she's well known for, as well as being able to throw back those penalties at the foes. and even giving out Paranoia, which is a very unique bonus, right? Being able to give out Vantage, even if it is conditional, highly conditional, to your allies is really strong. And giving out Desperation to other nukes is extremely powerful. And so I think Bernadetta offers some very valuable support to her entire team, while also herself being a ridiculously good nuke. Because she has no follow-up in her C slot, her B slot is open for whatever she wants, including things like Assassin Strikes, which means that she can stack up to like 40% true damage. When you're hitting 4 times with 40% true damage, you're gonna kill most things. Now when it comes to game modes, I can definitely see Bernadetta being used in Ether 8's defense and offense, and even summer duels as well. When it comes to defense, I mean, she could just fit easily onto a cav line. The only thing really bad about her is that she has Kanto distance, which means that she could like run back to the back line, which kind of messes stuff up, but it's not the biggest deal. And then offense, of course, she could work there as well as like an initiator or as someone who can like support Gale Force teams by giving those HP conditions. When it comes to summer duels, I think she's just going to be a really powerful nuke that like just offers really good support, and so obviously she'll fit into a ton of teams there. I think it's going to be interesting to see people rethink what penalties they bring on their teams, as there's a chance it's going to get thrown back in their face. With that said, let's move on to our second place on the female side, Brave Robin. Here we have female Brave Robin looking like her male counterpart, but in her case, she's going to be a tome unit with some really unique support as well. So we have her preference weapon, Exalt's Tactic, this is Slaying, and then if she uses a rally or movement assist skill, and there's no Divine Bane Ice currently on the field, she will apply Divine Bane Ice 2 spaces away from her target after her movement, so she can just kind of throw up this new terrain. And what this terrain essentially does is it acts as destructible terrain. So she can kind of just throw up an ice pillar and block the enemies, and now they have to break that to get to her, which is crazy. She then has another way to apply Divine Bane Ice after she acts, or after her Kanto triggers, or at the start of enemy phase when she's defending an Ether Raids, and she'll put that anywhere within 2 spaces of herself, and that will last for 1 turn. So this is already really crazy that it actually works in the ARD. And at the start of combat, if she meets the HP condition of 25%, she'll inflict a penalty on the foe's attack speed and resistance equal to 14 at max. She'll neutralize her own penalties, and she'll get anti-guard. And then lastly, when her special triggers, she'll get damage reduction piercing. So we have a very unique preference weapon that does offer some pretty powerful attacking effects, but really the main thing you're here for is the terrain support, and this is a new type of terrain which can act as just a complete nuisance and like shut down ways for your enemy to approach you, or just slow them down, making them use actions to break these ice. And the fact that it works in Ether 8's defense is insane, because it could be a way to shut down avenues for the opponent to approach you, which can shut down strategies like Gale Force or hit and run. We then have some amazing fodder in Flare and Attack Speed Finish. Then we have her Preference B skill according to plan. So what this essentially is going to do, it's going to grant Brave Robin herself and any allies within 2 spaces attack and speed +6 as a visible bonus, and Kanto 1. And then she will inflict Hush Spectrum and Panic on the closest foes and any foes within 2 spaces of that foe through their next actions. So that's a global range debuff. Then if she meets the 25% HP condition, she'll inflict attack speed resistance -5 on the foe during combat. She'll get up to 25 true damage and 15 flat damage reduction. And what this essentially is going to be based off is the visible bonuses on herself and the visible penalties on the foe, not including stat bonuses or stat penalties. So this is very similar to what we saw like on Legendary Claude, but it's a very, very powerful Preference B skill. It offers some very powerful and valuable support to your allies, allowing them to be more mobile and having those visible bonuses which you can take advantage of in different ways. But most importantly, you're getting Hush Spectrum and Panic. And the thing is with Duo Robin is that Hush Spectrum required her to use an assist skill or have an assist skill used on her or something like that, right? It was something that required action. But now with Brave Robin, Hush Spectrum can just be active all the time, and it's a global range. And this is very good against you-know-who, Emblem Ike, as this can essentially turn off his Great Ether, which can take away a lot of his kill power. And what that essentially does is it forces him to run a unit to give him special jump so that he can continue to use that special. So very, very powerful support here and very powerful penalties on the foe. And then it also offers all the conditions she really needs to be a good nuke: stats, true damage, and a bit of flat damage reduction so she doesn't get killed on retaliation. We then have a new inheritable C skill, Creation Pulse. And I'm assuming this will be like an upgrade to Times Pulse. What this essentially does is if the foe has a penalty active on them, you're going to get attack and speed +3 during combat. And then also if you're using an offensive special, you're going to get special jump. Now the special jump can be up to 2, but it's going to be based off the amount of penalties on the foe when you attack. And so this is just an insanely powerful inheritable skill. Special jump is definitely not to be underrated in any means. It gets around guard, it can get around scowl, and it can just make your specials very, very consistent. And it activates on the first attack, so you don't even have to like hit first to activate your special. You can just go right into your special and hit your foe really hard. Now the one thing is that you have to really consider is that it does require penalties on the foe, and it scales off of penalties. And so you're really going to want to put this on units who either have penalties themselves built into their kit, or you're going to want to build teams around that unit so you can ensure penalties are always active. So I think this is just a really cool and powerful skill, as it does encourage good team building and also offers just a lot more unique builds and power when it comes to your specials. I think this will be a very highly desirable skill and going to be some of the best fodder on this entire banner. Now when it comes to Brave Robin's roles, she's obviously a nuke support. That's exactly where she's fitting in. I think she's more on the support side than the nuke side, but definitely do not underestimate her ability to do damage because she's going to hit pretty hard. Now when it comes to game modes, I can definitely see her being used in either its offense and defense. She's just this fantastic support who can do a lot of things. In defense, she can shut down the enemy team's ability to like go at you either through hit and run and Gale Force, while also offering Hush Spectrum support, which can shut down things like Emblem Ike. And then on offense, she can do the opposite, where she can even help Emblem Ike and also shut down avenues for the foe's team to come at you and get to the back line and hit those supports. And if she puts up Ice Terrain, she can even block things like Emblem Selka from warping in, which is really, really strong. And so I think she's just going to be fantastic in both those game modes. And of course, with those kind of powerful support effects and solid nuking, she's also going to be really good in summer duels as well. And so overall, I think Brave Robin just got a fantastic kit combining the two best roles currently in the meta, nuking and supporting, and she does them both extremely well. And I think she fits extremely well into our current meta, which is also a big deal. It is time to move on to the final Brave unit of the batch, my boy, my favorite, Brave Felix. Let's start at the top with his preference weapon, New Lemon Sword. That's right, he is the one who gets the Lemon Sword after all these years, not Robin, but Felix. So this has Slaying ×2. We're starting off with some crazy effects right off the bat. That is right, he does not just get Slaying, but he gets Slaying ×2. This cannot reduce his cooldown on his special down to 0, but it can reduce it down to 1. So essentially you can think of this like having a Marth Ring already equipped, and you can equip another Marth Ring, so you could have Slaying ×3 on Felix. Think of all the possibilities. You also then get Distant Counter and Adaptive Damage. You then get +5 to all stats during combat. You get additional all stats plus 15% of your speed at start of combat. You get anti-guard, and you get damage reduction halving. And so this preference weapon overall, I'd say, isn't like insane if you don't look at the Slaying ×2. The other things are pretty basic effects that we've seen on lots of like Omni tanks or other units like that, but the Slaying ×2 really opens up a ton of avenues for Felix to do all kinds of weird hijinks. We then have Gust and Attack Speed excel as some amazing fodder, definitely some great fodder there, but then we have his preference B skill, Lone Wolf. Now while Felix's preference weapon might have been a little bit basic, Lone Wolf is anything but. This is going to give you Phantom Speed +7, and then you're going to get an extra action if you meet a few conditions. So the first condition is that you do not use an assist skill on Felix or have Felix use an assist skill. So he's pretty much a lone wolf, right? He doesn't want to hang out with anyone, he doesn't want to help anyone, and he doesn't want their help either. You then get extra action if Felix initiates combat, and you also can get another extra action if Felix takes an action without entering combat. And so this allows Felix to have up to 3 actions, not including Gale Force. With Gale Force, he can have up to 4 actions. So that's already by itself really, really crazy. But then also during combat, if he meets the HP condition of 25%, he's going to inflict -5 to all stats on the foe. He's going to get 20% speed-based true damage, including AoEs, which is a really big deal. He's also going to get 20% speed-based flat damage reduction, including AoEs, which is nuts. And then lastly, he'll get an additional 20% speed-based flat damage reduction whenever the foe's special triggers. So this skill is just kind of crazy. It gives Felix insane action economy, though it isn't like the most complex action economy. It's not like something like Duo Robin, who's really adding action economy to the entire team and helping them with positioning. This action economy is all about Felix just going in and murdering people and then either getting away or just running at them even harder. And so I think this is just really cool and very unique. And then it also gives him all the effects he really needs so that he can act as like a hybrid Omni tank, giving him the extra damage to kill things and the survivability so he's not easy to kill. Now, because he is slaying ×2, he can really easily run AoEs and he can run them extremely well. And so having true damage attached to that is a very big deal, as that will allow you to hit way harder. Having speed-based flat damage reduction is also really good, as it adds a ton of survivability, but having it work against AoEs is insane. It can just reduce the amount of damage you're taking by an absolute ton. But before we go to my overall conclusions, let's move on to his new inheritable C skill, Endless Tempest. So at the start of turn, you're going to give yourself 1 extra space of movement, and then if the unit or foe initiates combat after moving a space, you're going to get all stats +3 based off how many spaces moved, and you're also getting a dull bonus effect, so like a lull effect, right? Just turn off all those visible bonuses. So I think this is a nice inheritable C skill. I don't think it's like absolutely insane, but it does offer some nice stats and extra movement, which is really good. And you really can't underestimate dull effects. Being able to just turn off all of those bonuses is a big deal. It just turns off things like treachery and bonus doubler, and just kind of like gives you a big stat advantage. But with that said, it does make him weak to stall, so that is something to consider. Okay, so when it comes to roles for Felix, this is where things get weird, because Felix is just a jack of all trades, a master of none. He does a little bit of everything. He's a nuke, he's a tank, he's a hit and run unit, and he's a Gale Force unit. And this is where things are just so weird, because as you may know, typically if you do a little bit of everything but you aren't good at like one specific role, you tend to fall kind of flat. But because Felix is so unique with his slaying ×2 and all these other effects he has, it makes him extremely versatile in what kind of roles he wants to play. You can make him work as like a melee nuke. Now, typically melee nukes aren't very good in our meta, but with the emergence of the Celica ring, that has definitely changed. Typically, now you want to run a melee nuke, and you want them to have an AoE special, and you want them to have true damage on that AoE special. And guess what? Felix has both those things. Not only that, he gets an extra action, which means you could jump in, AoE special, kill whatever, threaten their team by having an extra action in their face, and be difficult to take down because you have all that damage reduction as well. And so I think that's really interesting when it comes to that nuking role for summoner duels. And when it comes to him as a tank, you would have to swap some stuff around. You're definitely going to want to go for like a more defensive special. You need to give him more damage reduction, as he doesn't have any like pierceable damage reduction, which sounds weird that you would want that, but believe me, you need to stack different types of DR for it to work effectively. And so that's something you're going to have to consider in his build. Now, when it comes to hit and run, Felix is really good there as well, as he can run in, kill something, kill another thing, and then get another action to leave, which is insane. You could even Gale Force and then get another action and then leave. And because he's a hybrid tank, you could even kill 3 things and then just kind of sit there and take the hits. And then lastly, of course, as a Gale Force unit, he just has a lot of actions. One thing you definitely have to consider is that not all 4 of his actions can be used to kill things. Only 3 of them can. So he's not in the same boat as like Duo Sharena or like Golveg, but it does allow him to have a lot of mobility, and he's much more tankier, so he can kind of just go in and kill the problem childs on the enemy team and then tank the rest of them. So when it comes to game modes, Felix will absolutely be good in Arena. He'll be good in Aether Raid's offense, and possibly in Aether Raid's defense as well. If you want to play him in that melee nuke role, you can put the Celica ring on him and then just have people get jump scares as he jumps with an AoE and then is difficult to take down. And lastly, of course, he can fit into summoner duels as well, where he can play a plethora of different roles, such as the nuke or the tank or something else completely different. I think Brave Felix is just an insanely weird unit, to be honest. He doesn't really fit into any role perfectly, so we're going to have to really see where Felix fits in. But because he has slaying ×2, he has so many options for his builds, like AoE specials, like Miracle with Breath of Life 4, allowing him to just heal up. Like, there's just so many options that I think Felix is going to have a great future for people who want to be creative. With all that said, let's move on to the next part of the video. Who is the best Choose Your Legends 8 unit? Okay, this is probably one of the most difficult choices I've had to make. Unlike any other year, this is by far more difficult, as these units are just so unique and so difficult to tell exactly how they will fit into the meta without having to actually play them myself. And so when it comes to the 4, I think that Brave Robin is the most generally powerful unit who fits into the current meta. So if you were to like look at the current meta as it is, Robin just fits in there too extremely well, as she has counters to units who are currently very powerful, and she offers support to units that is pretty much universal and good, and her nuking is very solid. And so I think that overall Brave Robin at the moment is probably the strongest unit. but that's definitely not to discount the other units, because I think with some small changes, they can definitely show up and be the best unit as well. Bernadetta herself is a fantastic nuke, and I think that her support is so unique and valuable that we really can't underestimate it without playing it with it ourselves. The ability to give other units Vantage can cause some really big annoyances in game modes like Summer Duels or even Ether Raids too. And so I think we can't really underestimate that, and the fact that she can nuke so hard, a quad bow with Desperation and 40% true damage is insane. So I think that alone makes her very powerful. Alfonse, I think, really is an interesting unit as well, as he's playing a defensive cav tank, which typically isn't a role that does very well. I mean, look at something like Legendary Xander. But I think what really makes him stand out and gives him a lot of potential for the future is that great talent effect, as we don't know if this will occur on other units, and if it does, we can go into a really weird stat stacking meta where you're trying to get a lot of units who have great talent and give it to each other, so all of a sudden you just have these giant stat balls you can't kill. So I definitely think there's a chance for Alfonse to show up there with his unique support. And then lastly, we have Brave Felix, and I think Brave Felix has the potential to be the best unit long term. The thing is with something like Brave Alfonse is that he is a tanky cav, which doesn't typically be very good, so he's really relying on the other units to bring great talent for him to be good. Bernadetta is a nuke, and so when her nuking falls off, even if her support is very valuable, if she can't kill things, then you're pretty much not going to be bringing her anymore. And the same could be said with Robin, where like if her nuking falls off so hard that she's only there as a support unit, then there's a chance she'll also be removed from the meta. But when it comes to Felix, Felix is just so ridiculously unpredictable with what he can do and what kind of builds he can run. I think there's a chance that he just lasts long. Having slaying times 2 means that any special that comes out in the future that he can use, he can take advantage of it in a way that a lot of other units won't be able to. And when you combine that with a ton of extra actions and just like all the other effects he has, I think he's just a complete wild card. And so I'm not exactly sure if Brave Felix will end up being the best unit long term, but I think he has the potential to be very versatile and powerful, and to kind of fit into whatever spot he needs to fit in the current meta or in different game modes. And so overall, I think currently Brave Robin is the currently most powerful unit, but I think Brave Felix has the potential to be the best unit in the long term, kind of like how Brave Crom ended up being the best unit, but Brave Stealth was definitely the best on release. Okay, let's move on to the final part of the video, should you pull. So when it comes to pros, this banner does have 4 sparks, which is insanely valuable. You also get to have some free summoning tickets and the free summon. So if you're doing full circles, you can get 1 spark for 135 orbs. You also get the free unit off this banner as well. These are 4 favorite heroes for a lot of the player base, so that's a great reason to pull as well. You get unique, powerful heroes. These Brave heroes are very different than any other unit in the game. They all have effects that have never been seen before, so that in itself is a great reason to pull. You also have a ton of new meta skills. These skills are insanely powerful and things you should not be underestimating. Things like Creation Pulse, Endless Tempest, Curved Shot for those tanky calves, and even things like Fortifications Reopening are really, really good, and I can see them being used on a lot of different builds, so I think that is a reason to pull as well. And lastly, of course, we have those unique support effects, which could really shake up the meta in different ways. Now when it comes to cons, Choose Your Legend heroes get the most reruns out of any heroes in the entire game. We're going to be getting a rerun most likely in December on one of the Legendary or Mythic banners, and we also typically get a rerun around the Anniversary or Golden Week. So there's a lot of reruns that will be happening here, so don't feel any pressure to like go deep on this banner or to plus 10 immediately, as you will get a lot of chances. You also get a free version of any Brave hero of your choice, so if you only really want one unit and you don't care about merges, you can also get that and then skip this banner. And then lastly, of course, we do have a new Legendary banner at the end of the month, and we have no idea what's going to be on there, so maybe the unit there will be very powerful as well. Overall, in my opinion, I think this banner is absolutely worth pulling on. I think that everyone should go for like 1 spark. It can cost you only 135 orbs. And getting 1 copy of every Brave hero typically is a good idea because we just don't know how they're going to really settle in the meta. So just having 1 copy of each of them allows you to have that versatility and to play all the different types of strategies that will definitely appear over time. Okay, but that's going to be my coverage of Choose Your Legends 8. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of these units? What do you think of their art? What do you think of their kits? What do you think of all the new skills they're bringing in? Who are you most excited for? What are your plans to do when it comes to pooling? I'd love to hear all of it, so drop a comment down below letting me know. As always, I'd like to thank all my members for their constant support, and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. This has been Oblivion. I'll catch you all later with a lot of Brave Felix.